There is definitely a cultural view that we're on the precipice of widespread ecosystem collapse, the sixth extinction, irrevocable structural changes to our global weather systems. There is an extremely cataclysmic and apocalyptic view that, to me, feels quite prominent in our culture. You've explored the world and space, and you are a very intelligent and technically minded person. I mean, what do you think about, do you have a more nuanced and layered view around those issues? What's your personal view around all of it?
I do think that there is a tendency in media and in human psychology to panic at times, and that sometimes things are not quite as bad as they seem. It's very possible that we could have major continued climate shifts and disasters, but I also try to look very coldly and clinically at data and what are the biases that are potentially inherent in data. So I think I kind of think like a scientist, and it's really hard. And I think one of the most powerful forces in the universe is confirmation bias. You hear it over and over again, particularly in investing, but also in science, is that there's a huge desire for us to confirm what we think is probably true. Now, back to the point about potential cataclysmic collapse of our civilization. This happens every 15 or 20 years. It does. Let's go back to 1940s. The Nazis are coming to power. They're going to destroy the world. The atomic bomb was dropped. Oh my God, we're going to have nuclear Armageddon. Well, it didn't happen. Bad things happened, but not that. And it didn't end the world. Then in the 1970s, there was the so-called population bomb. Oh, we're going to overpopulate the world. We're going to run out of food. Well, then you had the Green Revolution, and that didn't happen. Well, then in the 1990s, oh, Y2K is coming. The whole world is going to shut down, and we're going to have burning city. Okay, that didn't happen. It's always something that wants to prime our thoughts to think that there's going to be an apocalypse. Oh, yeah. One of my favorites is in the year 1000, the Pope banned crossbows because with the invention of the crossbow, they thought, oh my God, a peasant can kill a knight. The world is absolutely going to end now. And there's just this desire to think that we live in apocalyptic times. And yes, one can live in very difficult times. But you want to talk difficult times? Let's talk the 1600s and the 30 Years' War and the plague. That was really bad. Countries lost a third of their population. So we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to minimize the significant ecological, technological, political issues that we face. But every generation, at least a slice of the population, seems almost to want to believe that they live in the most apocalyptic time. I don't know why that is, but we do, and we always seem to muddle through.
Freud wrote about this. Freud said that annihilation anxiety is seductive because it allows our unconscious minds to process that which our conscious minds cannot, which is our own mortality, our own deaths.
Yeah.
It's a collective death.
Right. And maybe that's one reason why I do have the attitude I do that I just described, is because I think I've been through so much. I've learned how to control fear in many respects. I mean, just given what I do. And therefore, it's just something that I don't have to pander to. I treat it very clinically and logically. I do get fearful when I'm in very extreme situations, but I mitigate those risks.
Yeah.
And I function in them so that I can get through them. But I think some people, sometimes they just love to think that we live in an apocalyptic age, and we just don't, I don't think. This is actually one of the most peaceful times in all of human history. If you look back, and I love history, just the number of wars, the number of casualties. Yes, I know we have war in Ukraine. I know we have this and that. But if you look historically, it's actually not that bad. And when you look at the advances in medicine that we've had, how many people die from plague or from communicable diseases? Those used to be extremely serious issues. Entire populations were wiped out. That doesn't really happen anymore. The number of people that have come out of poverty just in China alone in the last 50 years is in the hundreds of millions that are now in the middle class. These are good things, but they tend not to be given the same import as the potential negatives that people love to focus on. I'm an optimist.
Yeah, well, I am as well, and I appreciate that. One thing I've wondered is the degree to which, so you've experienced the raw force of nature, the raw power of nature more. I mean,
yeah.
To what degree does that play into it? I mean, I've felt that some of the ideology at play here is influenced in an urban environment in places where the whole construct is mastery of nature, is not experiencing
right. It's
the raw
very
power
human centered. We are the center of the universe. We are all powerful. We determine our fate. And if you spend time in nature, especially if you spend time in really extreme places, you realize that is not at all the case.
Yeah.
And I think a brilliant example of that, a tragic one, is what just happened at Titanic, where I lost 2 friends in the sub. And that is a great example of human beings believing that they had technologically mastered a really tough environment and we're going to do this and that. But nature has a way of reminding you that she is completely unforgiving and you must treat it with respect. And I think that happens so often with the human condition. We like to think we're in control, but we're really not.
What did this experience, a surreal and tragic experience for you and for many people who were quite fascinated by it, teach you about self-delusion?
That's a pretty strong term. I'm not saying it's inaccurate in this case, but I do think it is a situation where for 50 years, there had never been a fatality or even a serious incident involving deep submergence operations, including my own for 4 years. And then OceanGate came along with their submersible, trying to be revolutionary, trying to build submersibles that could take more people down to 4,000 meters. And they did not follow the established safety designs or protocols. They refused to get certified by agencies, and that was a huge red flag. And we all have now publicly stated that, yeah, emails are out there, conversations were had saying this is an accident waiting to happen. And it just shows that sometimes at the bleeding edge of technology, you have to have a degree of humility and respect for nature. And yeah, they dove a couple of times to Titanic, and that gave them a false sense of security. But nature is completely unforgiving. And in the deep ocean, there's a great quote by my expedition leader, Rob McCallum, who said, you don't come away wounded from the deep ocean. You either come back or you don't. So, and it's kind of with the high mountains as well. So you have to treat it with a lot of respect. And human beings just don't seem to have a lot of humility sometimes about that.
Okay. I want to get into some of the engineering specifics around this, but do you think Stockton Rush was actually onto something with the idea that 70% of the world is ocean and there isn't a commercial means of exploring it? Do you think that there's actually, with a different sub, with a different set humility, that there's actually something to this idea that people want to explore the oceans, people want to go to the Titanic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one thing I would love to work on myself. How can we make deep submergence vehicles that can carry more people so more people can experience? I mean, there's a corollary for space travel called the overview effect, which is something the Apollo astronauts coined, which I now directly experience, which is when you go into space and you look down at the world and you see just how thin the atmosphere is, it gives you a much deeper, almost soulful appreciation for what we have on this planet. You don't see the borders. You see how beautiful it is, and you want to take care of it. It kind of changes you.